An introduction to protein, the building blocks of the body. Although protein can be used as an energy, it is the least favoured of all three macros, as it cannot be stored as easily as carbohydrate and fat. Fats are used as an energy, and fat is also stored as fat tissue. When the body needs to tap into its reserves, it uses fat tissue that turns back into a ketogen via the function of the liver. Carbohydrates, or glycogen, which is a form of sugar, is stored within the muscles and the liver. This is used constantly as a source of fuel. Protein is used for tissue repair. Like other macros, if there is too much protein intake in the diet, the macronutrient is stored as fat or used as energy. However, most people tend to lean on the side of not eating enough protein and therefore don't support their body's growth the way it needs to be supported. But let's make this simple for you. There are 2 rules of thumb you need to know. If you remember these rules, you'll be okay. Take a look at the next slide. Okay guys, so here we have the insulin index and the thermogenic rules. So for rule column 1, number 1, all 3 macronutrients have an effect on the body's insulin levels. So basically what that means is every time that you eat, your insulin will spike. Number 2, as we know from the previous week, insulin affects your body's ability to store fat, which is what we don't want. And the way that insulin can be spiked quicker, guys, is by consuming highly processed manufactured foods. Any refined carbohydrate, which is sugar, or protein, such as a protein powder, can spike insulin. Number 3, any refined carbohydrates, such as sugar, or protein, such as a protein powder, can spike your insulin. So we need to make sure our diets have a good mixture of complex carbohydrates and whole foods, such as meats, dairy, or plant-based food groups for your protein intake. Rule column 2, number 1. All 3 macronutrients have a thermogenic burning rate. So guys, as well as when you consume food and that food can spike your insulin, food also has a thermogenic burning rate. And basically what that means is that when you consume food, it takes energy to burn that food. So there is some deficit in when you eat a certain food group, such as a steak, will actually take more energy to burn and digest that steak than it would do minced beef. Rule number 2. This means that the energy it takes to digest and consume food and nutrients from the food that you eat has a burning rate added to it. Rule number 3. Fat has almost no thermogenic rate to it, meaning that it doesn't take a lot for the macro to be used. Carbs have a little more thermogenic burning rate of about 5%. Protein, on the other hand, has a very high burning rate of 25 to 35%, as the body has to work hard to process the molecule structure. Whole foods burn the highest, such as meats and fish. So there you go guys, with the thermogenic rates, basically fat doesn't burn very much. So when fat is consumed, it doesn't take a lot to be able to absorb and consume fat. When you eat carbohydrate foods, now carbohydrates can be anything from sweets and cakes to breads, but also inclusive of vegetables, root vegetables, and also fruit. The fiber that comes within those carbohydrates, or such as vegetables, take time to be able to break down, and therefore that breakdown has an energy expenditure of roughly about 5%. Protein, on the other hand, has a much higher burning rate of thermogenesis. Therefore, if you have slightly more protein in your diet, especially if it's coming from meat or fish, it will actually take longer and more energy to be able to burn that meal that you're consuming. Therefore, that there is a deficit inside that meal that you are having.